Серія інтерв'ю про літературні вебінари Канадсько-Української Мистецької Фундації на тему «Сучасна література української діаспори», частково спонсорована Шевченківською фундацією. Welcome to Art Talk. Today I am joined by two sisters, writer Maria Reva and composer Anna Pidgorna from Vancouver. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for finding time to talk to us. Before we start our interview, I would like to say that everything with all our activities, what we do now, are directed one way or another, helping Ukraine and to fight this horrible war and speeding up to the day of the victory. I know that both of you, Anna and Maria, immigrated to Canada with your parents when you were still young children. How does war affect you personally or your family?
Yes, we have relatives in Ukraine. So we had relatives in Kiev, and they did manage to escape to Slovenia via Poland. And we have relatives currently in Kherson, and at the moment the city is surrounded by the military, so they have not been able to get out. So we're hoping the situation will change there.
I know probably for you the same as for me and many other people in diaspora. We wake up every morning, we are 7 hours behind, and I am just dreading opening the news and reading, what other crimes I will see there today. When we were preparing for this interview and having talked with you, Maria, on the phone, you told me that Anna is collaborating with musicians in Ukraine, helping to preserve national archives. Could you please talk a little bit more about this, Anna?
So I'm not involved in the archive presentation, but I am in touch with a lot of musicians there because I collaborate with folklorists quite a bit. And I have some people from kind of the classical community in my network. And this is what they've told me, is that a lot of musicians in Ukraine right now are involved in kind of uploading archives to the cloud with the help of a few American institutions, I think. So the folklorists are doing all the years and years of our archival recordings, and composers are uploading scores. So just with this idea that if any of the archives are hit, they want to make sure that there are copies of everything.
Mm-hmm. That's a great endeavor. Maria, back to you. I would like to talk a little bit about your book, which was published in 2021 by KONTAKT Canada, Good Citizens Need Not Fear. This book was shortlisted for Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prize, which is now called Atwood Gibson Writers Fiction Prize, and is shortlisted right now, congratulations, for Kobzar Book Awards, which is given biannually by Shevchenko Foundation. This book describes relatives of ordinary citizens in Soviet Union. And given that you didn't live in Soviet Union, you were born probably right after it collapsed. First of all, what prompted you to write these short stories, and from where you were gathering your material?
Yes, what prompted me to write this story collection was this kind of random conversation I had with my parents. We were talking about the building we lived in before immigrating to Canada, and it was a relatively new building, and that first winter its heating didn't turn on, and my father went to the town hall to ask them what was going on, and when he gave them the address, they told him they couldn't find the address, which meant that there was no such building, so that building didn't exist. So he went on this bureaucratic goose chase around municipal authorities trying to prove that our building existed. So as soon as I heard that, I knew that I had to write about it. So that was the first story in the collection, and then it kind of other ones grew out of that organically. So the way I did research for the story collection was through a lot of family memory. So it was my own memory of those very turbulent times after the collapse of the Soviet Union, but also interviewing family members, and of course, the standard research books. But I also went to Reddit, if you believe me or not. there's a lot of information there. There are these 2 threads about what it was like to, be among the collapse of the Soviet Union, what it was like to live there at the time as an ordinary citizen, and people really just wanting to tell their stories, and regular people. So I scoured through like 2,000 comments to see what people had to say and what the kind of commonalities of their stories were.
When did you become a writer? Did you want to be a writer since you were a child? How did this happen? That from gathering stories to a book, like what was the process?
Yes, I've always liked to write, but I primarily started as someone who journaled. So I always kind of knew I had a pretty bad memory. So even as a kid, I knew I had to write things down because I would forget them later. And also when Anna moved away to university, this was before the days of Skype and when phone calls were expensive, right? And so we wrote back and forth with emails. So I think my love of writing really started there through correspondence, journaling, and then eventually I made the leap to fiction.
Yeah, when Maria wrote me emails, I would sometimes read them out loud to my friends in university because they were really funny.
Thank you.
So it's a natural gift, we can say, right? Which developed into the vocation. You both collaborated on the opera Our Trudy, which was written for the Ad Astra Music Festival in the States. I would like to ask Anna to tell us a little bit more about this opera and how was it collaborative creatively with your sister?
Yeah, so I was approached by the festival first with this idea. They already had the subject matter that they wanted to write about. It was about a woman that used to live in this town, had quite a dramatic life, both in the positive direction, but also with events that people had a hard time dealing with. And I knew right away that I wanted to work with Maria because I really like her writing. So I brought her on board. And the festival at first were a little cautious, like, oh, you want to work with your sister? Then they read her work and it's like, okay, she's a legitimate writer. She was already published at that point. So we work really well together. Maria is also a trained musician. She went through kind of the piano training as a child and teenager. So she understands some things about music. She has some of the vocabulary down. So it's a lot easier for me to talk about what I need from the words. And Maria's kind of more short and to the point style. I think really works for music because music stretches everything out so much.
I understand that Maria's book was published and opera came out during the isolation and COVID times. And it's really affecting the artists because you're waiting for this big day, you're waiting for these book tours or book presentations, you're waiting for the opera premiere, and here you had everything suddenly stopped. So how did this affect you personally? How did you take it? And what changes were made, to still go ahead with book presentations, the opera premiering and everything else?
Well, we were working on just beginning to work on a second opera together called Plaything. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and the workshops we had with the musicians, they had to be done virtually.
Well, the first couple.
Yes. Yes, which was difficult, but I mean, they made it work. It sort of works. Yeah, but it definitely has its limitations. And we also had a virtual workshop for the Our Trudy opera. Yeah, you hear the music, but the more musicians you have, the more distorted the sound becomes. So it's certainly made us appreciate. I'm sure you already appreciated that, Anna. Just the importance of being in the same room with musicians. It's a huge difference. And for me, for my book, it came out during the pandemic, and the book tour that had been planned was canceled. Of course, I've been very excited about it, but I also felt like my life, I was pretty lucky in that my life was already very suited to pandemic life. I was already working from home, and you know, I feel like writers are kind of isolated as they are. We sit alone a lot with just people in our heads, and to kind of deal with the disappointment, I just went right into writing my next book, and I almost tried to like forget my first book because it kind of was painful to think about it. But the events that got canceled, they did. A lot of them did get transferred to virtual events, and I think a bright side was that I think a lot more you know, libraries and events were able to we were able to engage together because we could do so virtually, and they didn't have to pay, you know, a plane ticket.
Yes,
so
I find it somehow that isolation sometimes helps the creative process, right?
I think so. I think for certain parts of it, for that kind of raw generative process when you're just at the beginning of a project. But I think you start to go a little bit nutty if you're in that for too long.
Yes.
Yeah, I did not find the isolation particularly inspiring, to be honest. I think as a composer, I mean, I do work a lot alone, but I also have a lot of interaction with musicians. So I really missed going to concerts and yeah, being able to rehearse together. That was tough.
Tell me about the project. What are you working now together collaboratively?
So we've been working on an opera for the past, gosh, it's been 2-3 years now.
2 years at least, yeah.
Yes, it's called Plaything, and it's being developed by Musique Trois Femmes in Montreal, who have been such a wonderful team, who have given so much resources to this opera, a lot of workshopping and support. So that opera is about, it's set in one single room, and it's about a hacker who can't leave an embassy because otherwise she would be extradited back to her home government because she's been charged with leaking government secrets. And there's an animal who visits her, a bird, and it's about this relationship they develop, kind of like almost a power struggle, because she tries to, you know, use this bird for her own messaging, I would say. So it's an exploration of, you know, what is freedom? Is it freedom of speech? Is it freedom of movement? Is it freedom from, you know, environmental destruction, as this bird comes from a forest? So,
or you know, freedom from violence.
Freedom from violence, yeah.
Anna, could you add a little bit more to that? Like, how is the work on the music for this project coming?
Well, that was actually the interesting transformation, because we thought of the project before the pandemic started, but then pandemic started and I had a hard time getting into the project for a while. I just had a hard time writing music in general, and I had a hard time getting inside the characters' heads. And then 6 months after being isolated and not seeing very many people, I suddenly had this moment of realization that I'm in some ways living this person's life, and also becoming a little bit like obsessed with social media and getting the likes, because that was the only way to connect with people. So the subject matter really opened up for me in a new way, let's say, because of the pandemic. Yeah.
On April 3rd, Maria, we are going to have a literary webinar with you. Could you please tell our viewers what can they expect, what you will be reading from what kind of text, and maybe Anna will show us some collaborative work excerpts if it's possible.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to April 3rd, and I'll be reading 2 excerpts from my book, Good Citizens Need Not Fear. I'll be reading from the opening story called Novostroika, and also from another story called Miss USSR, about a beauty pageant organized during the Soviet Union.
Very interesting. Looking forward to that. So I just wanted to address to our viewers and say that please find and buy Maria's book. You can find it online and read it before the webinar. And you can join us via Zoom. Zoom link can be found on the Facebook page of the event of Ukrainian Canadian Art Foundation, KUMF Gallery, or you can email us at info@kumfgallery.com and we will send you the link. Thank you very much for your interview and for your time, and we're looking forward to meeting you on April 3rd.
Thank you.
so much for
Thank you for
having
having us.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Серія інтерв'ю про літературні вебінари Канадсько-Української Мистецької Фундації на тему «Сучасна література української діаспори» частково спонсорована Шевченківською фундацією.